So you wrote on your website that you would be the voice for spending our limited budget wisely if you were reelected. What do you more specifically mean by this statement, and how would you actually spend our budget?
Well, so I've been on the city's budget subcommittee for the past 3 years. So, for people that aren't familiar with how government can work, is the way the city of Sebastopol is because of Brown Act. You may be aware that you can only talk to one other colleague about any issue unless you're in a public forum. So, a lot of times cities like ours create subcommittees where there's just two members on it to do more detailed work before we present in a public meeting um, the whole budget to our full colleagues. Because it's really difficult to dig in on a project when you're in a shorter public meeting format. So we can do some, I guess, like I said, detailed work and really analyze it. And then we make recommendations along with the full budget to our colleagues. So for me, my background, I run a small business, and so my mom was a bookkeeper, so I'm really good at accounting. And I think that served me well on the council with this budget to be able to analyze it and make recommendations. We are the smallest city as far as our budget in Sonoma County. The next closest is Catawba. And so we used to have about a budget that's 9.3 million, which might sound like a lot, but compared to other cities, it's really not very much money at all. And it's driven by sales tax revenues mostly. So without getting in the nitty, a lot of other cities that have either auto dealers or hotels have a lot more sales tax, and they have bigger budgets. So we don't have either of those things. And so our budget's very small, and we have to really watch everything we spend money on. Mm-hmm. We are just bringing forth in early October the budget recommendations to the city. And one thing I've done specifically in my 3 years on the budget subcommittee is really recommend a large number of money, what I call saving for a rainy day. So we put that money away in an account, and we had way more reserves than we really needed. So reserves budgets for Sebastopol are that we should keep our reserves in the 15 to 20% range, which is based on our entire city budget. Our reserves were in the high 30 range. And now during COVID, when our tax revenue is down, tax revenue is anticipated or already down 20%. So that means our city budget is coming in. We don't have enough money, and we're coming in with expenses that it's hard to cut. So we have to balance the budget, and we're using some of our reserves and recommending that in the budget meetings that will happen in October.
Yeah.
So,
follow-up question. In your plans, what do you plan to keep the 45% of Sebastopol's budget to the police fund?
So a lot of people are, and with good reason, for what is deemed 45% budget. There's a couple ways to go with the police budget. We could go and have contract with the sheriff's department like the city of Sonoma and Windsor does, and we would bring that budget down. However, as a philosophical, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm not impressed by the sheriff's department, and so I would not be in favor of contracting to bring our police budget down with the sheriff's department. That is one way cities bring that percentage down. It is large, and it looks really terrible to the public, but part of why it's large is because it takes a lot of money that's mandated by the state to run your own police department. There's a lot of rules and a lot of things that are very expensive. Like they have to do, I think this year, and it'll be in our budget, is mandated a new updated radio system for emergency response for 911 calls. These kinds of things are things that we can't get around replacing for public safety. And because our budget is so small, any budget that's larger, like the police budget, takes a bigger percentage, like the city of Sonoma or the city of Healdsburg, and had a much bigger budget just by the sake of percentage. Pretty much it takes about the same amount of money to run a police department. You know what I'm saying? So I have been in favor of bringing it down wherever we can in my 3 years on the council. And in fact, the police wanted an extra they actually asked for 2 new motorcycles last year. And I voted no on those and did not recommend those. There's been other things that they've asked for. And so I think a lot of it has to do with really analyzing that budget. With the police budget right now, I have recommended a placeholder amount of money for a social services person in the police department, shared with another neighboring small city. And the budget subcommittee, which consists of myself and another council member, Una Glass, are going to bring that item forward in the budget recommendations. I've already reached out to another city. Our vision would be we would contract with West County Community Services, similar to how we already have an agreement with them on Park Village. And that would be something we hope the rest of the council will agree with, and that we could move forward sometime in the future of this year. So that's important to me. So right now what we have is a consultant in there trying to figure out ways that we can both reallocate our money and also just look at our policies about community policing. And we are waiting for his recommendations, because I don't think it's just as simple as saying cut the budget. We have to know where to cut the budget for public safety. Mm-hmm. And that's why we invested in somebody to look into that, to advise us. I have a regular job. I'm a council member. I need information to be able to make an educated decision that will serve all of our community moving forward.
Great, thank you. So what is your view on policing in Sebastopol, just in general?
I mean, I don't know that I have, I think most people are fairly satisfied with the policing job that our policemen have done. I don't think everyone is perfect. Human beings are not perfect, and people make mistakes. But as a council member, it's not my job to be the chief of police. And also on council, the city manager manages the chief of police. So we're a little removed unless there's a problem. And it is my recommendation moving forward that we are hiring a new chief of police. Our department heads have generally been hired exclusively by our city manager. On my time on the council, I asked if council could interview for hires, and the other council members did not vote along with me, and they chose to leave it to the city manager to exclusively make that decision. I have once again asked to review our top 3 candidates as council members so that we could assure that we have department heads, not just for the police department, but all department heads that line up with our community values. Mm-hmm. And I believe that in that process, while it is not our job to tell the city manager what to do, that everybody that would interview would bring a certain set of qualifications, and those qualifications, I think it would be important to know what each person brings and weigh in on it. And then the city manager ultimately makes the decision. So I have asked for that when we hire our new police chief, and we will see.
Great. So what are your goals for Sebastopol in terms of climate change and reducing waste, and how would you achieve these goals?
So I've been really active in the zero waste initiatives. especially as mayor last year, and we continue to recommend things that are requested. We helped develop the climate change subcommittee that exists in Sebastopol. I've met with the climate subcommittee organizers. I am the alternate on the zero waste committee for our city. That's Sonoma County Zero Waste, and I helped hire its new executive director in closed session and weigh in on that decision. I think myself, I practice zero waste, and we approve things like for Anley High School to remove the paper towel rollers and different things. I think we've supported a community grant for, hand-free air dryers, that sort of thing. We've converted, I've helped pass for city ordinance that we have all reusables at all city offices, and we are in the process of changing out some commercial dishwashers in city offices so that we can clean those safely. And I really think at the end of the day, it starts at home, and I practice what I preach. So, that's my policy on, on zero. And then, I have a lot of endorsements protecting the environment. I just got the Democratic Party endorsement, Jared Huffman's endorsement. I have Carol Hart, former director of Sonoma County Regional Parks endorsement. So environmentalism is in my platform, and I just think it costs a little bit more, but the investment in the long haul really makes sense for us to just kind of pay attention to that.
Yeah. You also stated on your website that you would be an advocate for affordable housing. How would you take action with this statement?
So affordable housing is really my number one. I think that for Sebastopol, there's a lot of projects that I believe are going to come forth and have come forth. And we generally, at a city level, try to encourage affordable housing by giving the builders, sometimes if it takes to get affordable housing in the project, if we have to waive some fees for the city, we have generally debated and really looked at those fees and tried to waive some fees to get affordable housing approved. I did vote against the initiative that we used to have affordable housing set at 20% of every project, and my colleagues decided to lower that to 15% with the thinking that that would spur developers to develop. I believe developers have enough money in the project ready, and I worked to keep it at 20%, and I did vote against lowering it to 15%. And I would encourage in the future, if we had the council will, to bring that back to 20% of every single family housing development. So it still exists in our apartment ordinance. So if somebody was building an apartment complex, it has to be 20% low income housing. And I did talk to this developer who was thinking about building apartments, and he said, yeah, well, we're going to put the low income in this building and the other, income in this building. And I adamantly opposed that. I said, nobody wants to know who got low income housing. They need to be mixed inside the entire complex. That's ridiculous. Like, we don't judge people by their checkbook. So that's my belief, and I'm very vocal about that.
Awesome, thank you. So what is your plan to reduce homelessness?
So I have participated, and this is unique to me on the council, in the place and count, homeless count for the last 2 years. Well, not this year because they didn't do it. So 19 and 18. And then also I slept out for SAY and raised funds over $3,000 during my sleep out for teen homelessness. That's one of my big organizations that I love is SAY, Social Advocates for Youth. So it's a difficult situation. We are trying to balance homelessness, and yet homelessness is increasing with just trying to get homeless folks to accept services, which all of them don't want to accept services. So I think that I'm also on the Park Village subcommittee, which has placed, and I've been on that since I was elected in 2017, and we have developed Park Village in our city as a place to house homeless people to try to get them up on their feet. So I don't know how much you know about Park Village, but we have a full-time case worker there and a full-time site manager. When I got elected, we were spending $80,000 a year for that, and we had more police calls there. It was not a good environment with these people that lived there. And we invested an extra $30,000 a year to get up to about 110 to convert that to a low-income housing project owned and run by the city of Sebastopol, contracting with West County Community Services. And that investment has helped take 11 people so far that were housed there and move them in and on with their lives to permanent housing. So we're a small city. We don't have a ton of money, but that is one thing. And we're right now making investment. We've got a lot of grants for that in 2 new RV pads that we will, that has ordinance that says local preference for our local homeless. And we will heavily promote that for our RVs that are currently throughout the city, mainly on Morris Street, to move over to Park Village and participate in the program so that we can help get more people up on their feet.
That's awesome. So with that, what is your view on the Sebastopol Inn project?
So I voted for the Sebastopol Inn project. That was a 4-1 vote. I think it's a difficult situation, but there are some advantages to that project. It's not in our county jurisdiction at all. We have no control. Doesn't even have to run through our planning department. B, the advantages are we have some free money for the state of California to add homeless rooms within our city to help get our homeless that are living in RVs housed, okay? The county would not commit to us that they would give local preference, so I think that's up to the local officials like myself to lobby our supervisors to get that if that project moves forward. This is why it's important. Some people don't realize how important it is, your endorsements and how you work across the aisle with other elected officials. But for example, the People's Lane, somebody just told me yesterday that Mike McGuire mentioned me in a thing because I actually reach out to other elected officials and lobby for our city to get things done like the People's Lane. And I lobbied both Mark Levine's office and Mike McGuire's office to help us in Sacramento get that approved by the governor. Same thing goes with that homeless project. If it moves forward, I said publicly with Linda Hopkins, who's endorsed me and I have a good relationship with, that Linda needs to go to bat for us to get, like we have at Park Village, a full-time case manager contract with West County Community Services and a full-time on-site manager. Not security. We don't need security. We need somebody, I think of it like kind of like a sorority house, like a sorority mom or something. We need somebody on site for when there's problems, right? So that's what I believe to make that project successful. And it houses 65 and older in supportive housing. And I run an assisted living for the elderly, and I know when people have good, healthy meals and health care and people helping take care of them, they can thrive.
Great. So, will you sign the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge?
I got to tell you, I don't really know much about it. So I don't sign pledges unless I thoroughly understand them, who's behind them, and I would have to read it.
Okay. What is your plan to increase Sebastopol's fire preparedness and resiliency?
So, I was the mayor last year during the emergency evacuation. I felt like we did a good job. Myself and Uniglass, the budget, have recommended in the budget. We already have a Map Your Neighborhood program with a man that we finance through our fire department budget that helps emergency preparedness. I have signed up to be a neighborhood leader myself, and I have talked to Skip and have all that in place, and have talked to some of my neighbors about that. But we added what we knew was a negative associated with that program. Skip is a great, I'm being recorded, so I don't, but what's the right word? He's a great emergency guy, but he's not great at PR, right? So when I got involved myself, I realized, and even I was communicating with another candidate, Diana Rich, and she's like, oh yeah, I'll share my neighborhood list with you, because Skip hasn't created like the format for it. So other community leaders can set that up in their own neighborhood. So myself, I brought it up at the subcommittee level for the budget, and I said, we're cutting a lot of things, but one thing that I think is really important is that we get some admin time and somebody that's really good at creating this rollout. So when somebody raises their hand and says they want to be a community leader, we can easily send them the spreadsheet and the things to do to be a community leader. And that's the part we're missing with our map your neighborhood position, in my opinion. So that's one thing that I'm doing, and I'm bringing that forth in the budget to the full council, and we will see, because the full council votes on the full budget, and that's an investment that I think we need to be making to move our program further ahead for our city.
Great, thank you. So what is your view on the Green New Deal?
So again, the Green New Deal, I don't think I've signed it, and we haven't taken it up as a council. And again, I got to tell you, I'm not really up to speed on it. I feel like these are policies that are created, and maybe they're more recent policies, but honestly, I would have to look into it and bring it forth on our council agenda to see if the city, as a city, if we wanted to sign on. I would assume we're the greenest city in the county that we would, but I have not signed on personally, and I don't know enough information to speak to it to you.
Yeah. So this is a more general question. What is your vision for Sebastopol?
So, I grew up here. My mom grew up, well, out in the county. My mom didn't live in town, so, but it was before there was a town incorporated. And I raised my kids here. So my vision and why I ran for city council 4 years ago is I wanted a voice to be able to keep our town the way, develop, if it has to develop, which everything has to move forward, to have a voice in creating where we were going. Sebastopol is still undiscovered, I feel like, in many, many ways, and we've kept it that way. But I mean, let's be honest, the real estate market is super hot right now. As I walk door to door, there's more and more people that have moved to Sebastopol. I had somebody last night when I was walking door to door tell me they came from New York 6 years ago and they consider Sebastopol an unknown treasure, undeveloped. So I want to make sure that as we get discovered, that we grow in a way that our city believes in. And that means that we don't want empty neighborhoods with second homes. We don't want sprawl development. I mean, we have our urban growth boundaries. And in fact, somebody did apply last year to try to pull sewer and from across out of the boundary. And it was recommended by our planning commission, yes. And as a council, we voted no. Because once that starts to happen, then how do you stop the next neighbor and the next neighbor and the next neighbor? And all of a sudden, we are moving outside our urban growth boundary that was passed by the voters. So the council is important in many ways because we are the final vote. And I think we're really true to what our citizens want. And that means slow, we're Chittislow City, slow growth, slow food, walkability, bike lanes, community policing that, goes along with our values. I mean, that's why I ran 4 years ago, and that's why I want to continue to be on the council, to keep kind of being the watchdog of things that can slip through, frankly.
Yeah, so what are some of your values as a council?
Well, so as a council, I mean, I think it's important that as the council, so a lot of people, especially now that I'm running for re-election, they're like, I'm mad at the council, or I'm happy with the council. And I'm like, well, the council is 5 individual people that represent the voters. So I'll just say I'm not afraid to be as transparent, as honest. I took this interview today because I will meet with anybody that invites me to, and try to be as honest about my views, because I think that's transparent government. And that's what I believe in. I'm the only one in our city endorsed by the young wine country voters in the county. And that's, you have to be a member, you have to be under the age of 35. I want to encourage people to run for office. I think anyone can run for office. And I have invited all the candidates running for office in this campaign to my last weekend fundraiser event. And so whoever is elected, if I'm elected and I have to serve with somebody, you have to work with your colleagues, but you also have to stick by your beliefs and our community beliefs. And in a democracy, not everybody believes everything the same exact way, nor should we. So, by talking and sharing ideas, I think that I become more educated, people that I talk to become more educated about the process. And that is really my base belief, is open, transparent government that encompasses everyone. And I take every interview and speak with everyone that reaches out to me.
Awesome.
I can't speak, like I said, as the full council, but I think everyone knows in Sebastopol, it's a pretty progressive group of people that are elected by our citizens.
Yeah. So just like a little clear up thing, some people have confused. Are you running with Diana Rich?
So there's 5. I'm not running with anyone. It's right on my website. I do not accept or take endorsements of any other candidates within City Council that I sit on, for transparency reasons. I think that it is, I took this position a few years ago. It's right at the top of my endorsements. I do accept endorsements for others that I have worked with that know of my work and endorse my work ethic. But I think when you're sitting with colleagues, how do you decide who to endorse or not endorse? You kind of have to and how does that encourage new people to run? Mm-hmm. So there's 2 seats up and there's 5 candidates. Diana Rich just happens to have been out early, and so her and I have the most signs out. So a lot of people that know me, because I've been really involved in my life here with nonprofits, also know Diana Rich because she ran the community center for 7 years. But Everett Fernandez, he came to my event last week. I have met with him multiple times. I've met with him and his wife. I met with Luke, our planning commissioner, who's endorsed me now when I thought he was going to be in the race, and I encouraged him. And I have a relationship with Michael Karnacki, who I sit on the council with. I have reached out to Vaughn, and I guess that's all of us, right? Michael, Diana, Vaughn, myself, and Everett. So, yeah, there's just a lot of signs, and I do think it's going to be a split vote, depending on how it goes. I don't know. So, yeah, 5 people running. I'm not aligned with anyone. I am neutral in the race, and I'm just running my own campaign. But I'm a collaborative person and a collaborative worker, and I think it's important to foster that environment on the council, because you don't want to always be fighting. You kind of, sometimes you have to make compromises as you talk it out. And that is a good thing. You have to be able to reach across the aisle, even though, like I said, not everyone. I mean, when I was married, I didn't even 100% agree with my husband. My kids and I don't always agree, but we still can debate it. And sometimes we say, well, we agree to disagree, and you have to take those positions and walk away, especially as an elected official, and not hold any hard feelings, because in 2 weeks there'll be another issue that you have to settle. So
Yeah. So what are some things, like, what are you most proud of that you have done in your 4 years of city council?
So one of the things I'm most proud of, especially now during COVID, is I brought forth twice, and it passed on a 3-2 vote, the use of laptops or iPads instead of paper packets. So when you asked me about my zero waste goals, two of my colleagues voted against that because they liked the old paper and they were in their habits. And I brought it forth once, and then they were like, oh, we don't know if we can afford it. I'm like, it's an investment in the future and in our policies. And here we say we're zero waste, but we're using reams of paper every weekend, throwing them in my recycle. So that is a huge thing for me. And it was tough to get passed. So, while we're a progressive council, you'd be surprised. So there's that. I also brought forth Locals That Make a Difference. Locals That Make a Difference was my initiative. It actually was a member of the public that came forth and said, a conservative member of the public that said, I think we should put our people that are serving in the military on our street poles, like they do in Windsor and Cloverdale. And I said, I don't think that, I value everybody's service, but I don't think that represented our real whole community values. And I started thinking about that idea, and I noticed there were open street poles a lot of the years, and I decided to bring forth Locals That Make a Difference, which is local people that usually don't grab the spotlight but are volunteering and doing things every day. And it was really important for me to not only do City of Sebastopol people, but anybody that ordinance is written that associates Sebastopol as their hometown. So if they live right outside city limits, they can still be a local that makes a difference, because I grew up outside the city limits when I was a child and went to Twin Hills School, but Sebastopol was my town. So that was a really important way to write that ordinance. And a lot of our locals that make a difference, that volunteer and have done things for our city, they live outside the city limits, and we've been able to honor them in that way. And so that is a super important thing for me too. And it was really great for me to kick that off with Carson Forstick, who was in his senior year at Anley at the time. It gives me goosebumps even thinking about it. As an example, I honestly don't know if my own children, if that had happened to them, whether they would have had the fortitude to go back to Anley and finish their senior year with their peers after he was this athlete, an example, and then what happened to him. I thought, oh my gosh, a local that makes a difference does not have to be a grown-up, honestly. And I advocated for him, for that, to be our first local that makes a difference. Still, I just think he is such a amazing individual and an example to youth and adults for what it takes in difficult life situations.
Yeah.
So I would say that's two. I mean, I've done a lot of things. I think our emergency response when I was mayor, I was down there every day at the Barlow, walking, trying to get FEMA money. And at the end of the day, when we got the $1.5 million from the state. I mean, that was like a windfall. I don't think Sebastopol has ever got money like that. And that's because of the advocating with our government officials that we really needed support after that flood. And all the walking I did with Jared Huffman and FEMA and people, that helped get us that money. And I truly believe that. And so, I mean, our emergency response, both to the flood and the evacuation, I feel like we did a really good job.
It's awesome. I'm curious, did you go to Annalee?
So I say I grew up in Sebastopol, but I grew up here until 7th grade, and then my parents moved us out of state. And so I left Twin Hills in 7th grade, and then I came back to Annalee for my junior year. And then I did not graduate from Annalee. We moved again my senior year. I technically in my senior year was moving around quite a bit. And so, but my sister, who was 2 years younger, spent 3 out of 4 years at Annalee and graduated from Annalee in the 80s.
That's awesome. Well, those were all the questions that
Okay.
I had. Yeah, thank you so much.
Now, I've met you before, right? Did I meet you at Black Lives Matter mural, or?
Yeah.
You look super familiar to me.
Well,
Like, I think I met you down there when I came and put my handprint. Was that you?
Maybe it was. I mean, I'm in the BLM visibility team.
Okay, yeah. I'm pretty sure I met you when I came and put my hand down. So as we've been talking, I recognize your voice, and yeah, you look really familiar to me.
That's cool.
So, yeah. So anyway, yeah, I hope that's helpful. Again, I really think that it's really important, and I love the student engagement. And I want to encourage. I was in student government myself, and leadership, in high school. And even though then I didn't run for office till late in life after I raised my kids, because I was doing, I've just been a working mom my whole life. So it's been hard to juggle everything, but now that the kids are raised and I can get more involved in my community in this way, I think that it's really important to, like I said, just listen to everybody's voice. And you guys, like the Green New Deal, like I probably should follow up and on some of these things, because sometimes I do feel like, we're a little late to catch up, but also I'm juggling a lot of different things. And so I'll make note. It's the Green New Deal. And what's the other thing that you asked about that I need to
No
follow up
fossil
on?
fuel money pledge.
No fossil fuel money pledge. Okay.
Yep. So,
I promise to read those, and I will know about them the next time. So this is a good warm-up, because we're going to have our League of Cities forum and different things like that. So,
exactly.
and these might be some questions that come up.
Totally. Probably, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much, Nora, and I look forward to hearing from you and your group.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye.